We're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, and this one about a potential Deshaun Watson appeal.
Dave, this is Cassius, the self-proclaimed quintessential Cleveland Browns fan. I'm calling on something about Deshaun Watson and what his punishment might be. A lot of people are saying that if Deshaun Watson gets a certain amount of games and then he appeal it, just say he gets 4 games or 6, and he appeal it, that the commissioner might then give him 8 games or 10, so he's not going to appeal any type of punishment that's 8 games or below. But the whole point of being able to appeal your punishment, you're appealing it and saying it's too much, it's too harsh. So it's just like if you're in court and you get sentenced to something and then you appeal your sentence, they're not going to give you more time because you appealed it. You're either going to get less or you're going to be left with what your original sentence was. So there's no harm in Deshaun Watson appealing the decision when it comes down, even if it's 6 games or 4. He don't have to accept that. What do you think about that? Because if he appeals, they can't then add more time to him. There's no risk to Deshaun for appealing it because the commissioner is going to get a chance to add more time to it if he wants anyway, as long as the judge gives him any type of punishment. So just clarify that for your listeners. Thanks. You know I love the show and everything that you're doing. Go Cleveland Browns.
All right, Cassius, always appreciate the voicemails. Let's welcome in Quincy Carrier. So Quincy, relative to the potential appeal, Roger Goodell and the NFL has said pretty steadfastly they want a year, indefinite with at least a year. That's why if it's less than that, an appeal is on deaf ears, I think. The appeal, if it's a year, would be to the courts, and that's even an uphill battle as well.
Yeah, do you really want to add more like legal litigation? And if you're Deshaun Watson like that, if it's not necessary, right? If it's 4 to 6 games, yeah, you could appeal, but then you wouldn't be appealing to the NFL, right? Because the NFL, they've already made up their mind on what they feel like should be deemed out based on the Stu Robinson thing. You don't want to, give them another opportunity to change their mind based on how this thing sways in the public opinion. Also, you don't want to go to court with this whole thing unless you have to, because you're already dealing with an extraordinary amount of legal stuff if you're Watson's camp. So I don't think he will appeal if it was 4 to 6 games. And on the whole thing that Mike Florio was talking about, one of the things is interesting. Yes, Goodell does have final say, but this has more to do about the entire CBA than it just has to do about this one situation. Could Goodell go in there, overrule everything, and give Deshaun Watson whatever suspension he can? Theoretically, yes, it's true. Is that going to be his best play or a play that he sees as a valid one? That's more up the question, right? Because if he does that, he completely throws away all the leverage that he built up, giving the players union this outside arbitrator in the last collective bargaining agreement, which means when there comes a new negotiation, like, things are going to be even more difficult for the league on that front. People have to remember they have to renew these CBAs every 4 or 5 years. So that's always on the mind of the commissioner. Also, another thing to keep in mind is, does Roger Goodell and the NFL want this thing dragging out in court? Because Watson's camp's already threatened to take this thing out to court if this is a unsatisfactory suspension, which is a year plus, right? So that also factors in this. And also there's the other part of the reason the NFL agreed to this, bringing in a third party, is because they also don't want to have unilateral control over these suspensions, because it becomes something that they become responsible for. They much rather put their hands up in a situation and say, hey, this is what we pressed for, but this is what a federal judge deemed was necessary. We are not a dictatorship here. This is what we will roll with, right? Like, that gives them a certain amount of leeway when it comes to advertisers for, the television contract and everything else. And it gives them that kind of, hey, we tried, but we're going to let this be a process here kind of deal. There's a reason a lot of companies separate themselves from the direct punishment and go to arbitration to protect themselves from situations like this.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so look at it this way. Does Roger Goodell want to piss off the players union, or is he going to take a hit from the public relations, from the people that wanted a large suspension PR-wise? And he can again just say, look, we put our best case forward, and it was the judge. It was an independent former federal judge who decided the suspension. So there's some plausible deniability. It'll be really interesting to see what happens if it comes out with a lesser sentence.